the Downriver Utility Water Authority, and I wanted to hand it over to the mayor first, and then we can get started with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll try to keep it as brief as possible and answer as many questions as we possibly can related to item 16. I'd like to introduce first Vito Canellis from OHM. Vito, if you don't mind just allowing our team to make their own introductions after you, and then if you want to kick off the presentation, that'd be great.
Okay. And so let me go to Dan.
Yeah, hi, I'm Dan Artave. I'm an attorney with Fasson Bond. I'm DUWA's legal counsel.
I'm Bill Brickey with Plant Moran. You may know one of my partners, Beth Bailey. She's been involved with the system for quite a while now, and we're assisting with the transaction here.
And also helping out tonight is going to be your attorney.
I'm Patrick McCauley, legal counsel for the City of Taylor on this matter.
And do you want to kick off?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
For those that don't know, Patrick McCauley has handled legal issues related to the DUWA and some of the water issues. Patrick, for what, 3 decades now?
I'm afraid so. Thank you, Mayor. I haven't had the opportunity to meet some of you, but I'm delighted to be here tonight. I've represented the city going back to the mid-'80s, both on general matters and more particularly on environmental matters, water, sewer, particularly as relates to the Downriver system. And that's the focus of our discussion tonight in terms of the Downriver system and its future, and the city's future going forward in relation to it. In 1962, Wayne County entered into a service agreement with 13 communities to operate the plant on their behalf. It's charged rates, has done some of the improvements. In the mid-1980s, EPA sued Wayne County, claiming that what was coming out of the end of the pipe at the treatment plant was in violation of the Clean Water Act. Wayne County said, gee, you know, we're happy to be sued, but we really think you ought to bring in the other communities too, because they end up paying for all the improvements and they are necessary parties. The result of that lawsuit was a 1994 consent judgment whereby the communities agreed they would fund improvements to the treatment plant, roughly $250 million, $250 million. Those improvements were made over time, and because of that, the community said, because we put all this money into the system, we need to have more of a say in how the system operates going forward. So based upon that, we formed what's called the Joint Management Committee, which allowed the representatives of each of the 13 communities to have a say going forward about how the plant was going to be operated, the rates that were going to be set, capital improvements were going to be made going forward. That worked out fairly well for a time, but as the 1962 contract expired, the 50-year contract expired in 2012, we approached Wayne County and said, we really would like to talk to you now about having more of a role than simply advisory. And we negotiated a service agreement which was approved by the County Commission but was eventually vetoed by CEO Evans. At that point, the community said, well, you know, we may be tired of having the county operate this for us. They're claiming ownership in it. We want to take it over. We want to really take a hard look at taking it over. The result of that was the negotiations were started to take over the operation and the ownership of the treatment plant in Wayne County. To the point where now we're at a stage where we have a definitive transfer agreement, which we're going to talk about this evening, talk about some of the provisions for it, answer your questions about the agreement going forward, and why, at least from my opinion, it makes sense to join with the other communities at this point who are agreeing to really take over the ownership of the treatment plant through the Downriver Utility Wastewater Authority. So that's kind of a quick historical background on it. I'll turn it over to Vito to take it from here.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. We've got a little bit of a slideshow here that we'll quickly run through, and you should have copies of the presentation there. I'll give a little bit of a historical overview and cover the technical parts. So the system we're talking about transferring includes the wastewater treatment facility in Wyandotte. Sits on about 38 acres, I think it is, over there, and the system was started in 1938. It was expanded to the current 13 communities in the early 60s, as Patrick mentioned. It currently serves about 350,000 people. And it is a what's called as enterprise fund. All the costs to construct the system, to operate the system, are all paid by the communities and the ratepayers that are tributary to the system. So there's no regular county general fund dollars that go into it. So they have the overall responsibility, but it's really from the costs that are generated by the communities that the system goes forward. So as Patrick kind of went through this a little bit about the 20-year service agreement that was getting work done, but before it took effect, decided not to go forward with that. And so now, going through the process of deciding whether to whether the authority should now purchase the facilities and go forward that way. We have gone through a selection of a contractor to operate and maintain the facilities. That is DUWA, a very large firm that does this across the country and around the world. So there's a multi-step process to go through to decide on whether the communities want to go forward with this definitive transfer agreement and want to move forward with taking over the system. The steps are laid out there. The cost would be generated through a revenue bond that Bill will explain a lot more about as he goes through his part. He'll talk also about existing and future debt. The responsibility for the treatment facility, it is operated under what's called an NPDES permit, and the DUWA would take over that permit with their contract operator. Veolia would have the primary responsibility for that. So the assets that are included in the deal is the actual Downriver treatment facility, approximately 38 acres, about 30 plus buildings. If you've been through it, it's a rather large facility. Also, all the pipes that bring the flow to it, 7 interceptors that serve the 13 communities, about 63 miles of pipes. And then the Downriver Tunnel System, which was built as part of the consent decree that Patrick talked about in the mid-90s. Another important part is, as I mentioned, it is an enterprise fund, so all the costs that go into it stay in it. Currently, there's about $38 million in reserves that are available in that system, and that would all transfer over as part of the agreement.
Are you taking questions during this, or should we?
It's your pleasure.
Yeah, that's fine.
What happens with the assets that aren't part of this purchase transaction?
So the other assets that are not part of the transaction, so there's the system that each community owns and operates, just like you do currently. And then there are some facilities that the county owns and operates on behalf of, like, for example, drainage districts. There's a Southgate Wyandotte Drainage District that the county operates. DUWA decided that since that only serves a couple of the communities, would not take that over. And so the county is going to look to transfer that over to somebody else, either to the communities directly, which they indicated they didn't really want to do that. They like the idea of it staying as a drainage district, but the county will probably turn over operations to an operator. In that particular one, that is right next to the treatment plant, and operations are a little bit integrated, and chances are that they actually have asked our contract operator, Veolia, for a proposal to one of those facilities as well. There is another facility called the Taylor Basin that is part of the Ecorse Creek Pollution Abatement District, and Dearborn Heights and Taylor are both tributary to that. And again, that facility is under a drainage district agreement the county currently operates, and is going to look to get out of that, whether they go out for proposals for somebody to operate that on their behalf, or whether the drainage districts just decides to go out for proposals or just select somebody, however they choose to do that. But DUWA would not be taking over
Do
those.
we see the city of Taylor, is that a cost, a potential cost to the city of Taylor for the Taylor facility, or is that gonna be strictly through the drainage district?
You currently have that cost through the
Right.
drainage
I'm
district.
talking about additional costs once this transfer takes place, if it takes place.
I don't know whether,
Sorry, are we talking about the Ecorse Creek?
yeah.
Ecorse Creek is actually a separate rate. Our rates are broken down by water, sewer, and Ecorse Creek, so this won't, I don't think this will have any effect on Ecorse
Okay.
Creek rate.
So we transfer, if this transfer takes place, it's a non-issue
For
relative to.
the Ecorse Creek.
Okay, thank you.
You know, if I could, the only thing that remains to be determined that Taylor and Dearborn Heights would have to determine is, do we want to go out for bid independently of the county? Do we want to let the county continue the as-is? And I don't think that portion has been determined yet. But whatever it is, we do not expect that will be a change of the rates in one way, shape, or form.
Councilman Remick.
Is it, our facility that sits on the other end of our town here, is that facility ever used to hold backup water? Has it ever exploded up there or anything that you're aware of where you had to do a lot of repair?
Yes. I wasn't directly involved in it, but I
Okay.
heard the stories about that.
Where they held the water there because the system was overloaded and it ended up having a severe problem at that facility at one